Probably noticed there are tables out there. The Surfrider Foundation has a table. Koholaleo has a table. Kauai Alliance for Peace and Justice has a table. Friends of Maha'ulupu have a table, and they have a petition they want you to sign. And they're, oh God, Sandy, what's the name? Sandy Herndon? What's the name of your group? Women's Caucus has a table. Okay. All right. What's planned tonight? This was billed as a panel discussion because I didn't really know how to explain it. But really, it's much more like a meeting. So the Super Ferry came in here 10 years ago this weekend over there in Wili Wili Harbor, and it was turned away. And a lot of you were here during that evening, but a lot of you were here for the whole campaign. The campaign lasted 2 years, maybe more. And for those of you who were here at the time, I just want to ask a show of hands, who thought the Super Ferry was a good idea when they first heard it? When you first heard about it, didn't you think it was a good idea? It's like, whoa, cool, we can take a ferry to Oahu. It's going to be cheaper than the plane. We don't have to rent a car. What an awesome deal. Until we got educated. Once we got educated, we changed our minds. And then we went out and we tried to change other people's minds. Yeah. So, when you think about it, that's really how social change is done, is educating people. It's all about educating people, because once people know that something is dumb, they usually stop doing it. Not always. It depends. If they're going to make a lot of money, they might keep doing it. But most of us, once we find out the facts, we try to educate our friends, our neighbors, and that's really what this campaign was all about. So what I want to do tonight is I've asked Jimmy Trujillo. Jimmy's a KKCR talk show guy on what time? 5 to 6, or how does that go? 4 to 6 on Thursdays. And Jimmy was really our spokesman during the Super Ferry campaign. Anytime the press wanted to talk to somebody, they called Jimmy. And well, sometimes my chagrin, but that's another issue. And Jimmy, I'm going to ask Jimmy to just talk for 5 minutes, giving us an overview of what happened. Kalasara Citation from Koholaleo is going to talk about one of the events we did. And I picked it out because I thought it was a really unique and an exciting event that united people and educated the public at the same time, got people involved. And this empty chair here is for Rich Hepner. Rich Hepner was the chair of the People for the Preservation of Kauai, and he was going to speak tonight, but Rich was taking baby aspirin every day, and it ate a hole in his stomach, and he lost half his blood and almost died. So he's doing okay. He's recuperating in Oregon, but he couldn't make it tonight. So I'm leaving this empty chair, and I'm going to try to fill it. I'm going to try to give my 5 minutes for Rich. And then I'm going to ask you all, what did you think we did well during this campaign? What did you think went really well to help educate people to stop the Super Ferry? And also, did we make any mistakes? What did we do that maybe didn't work? So I'd like to have a discussion. So if you came here for a lecture, it's not going to happen. We're just going to talk a little bit up here. So I'm going to, Jimmy, put away your phone. Put away your phone. You're going. Go ahead. Use the microphone.
there. We good? Yeah. You can hear me in the back? Perfect. Right on. So thanks, Gordon, for making the space for Prider. That's really, I know there's a little bit of work involved in making stuff like this happen. And I think you acknowledge the role I played in kind of helping us get it together right there at Nawali Willie on Sunday, the 27th. And, there's a lot of things beforehand. I'll talk a bit about that and the work that PPK and other folks. I think, sitting on the board with the Sierra Club, and they were involved in a lawsuit statewide. I think Maui was really kind of leading the way legally, and we were catching up. And there was some frustration with the fact that folks can't even remember the name of the company that was the vendor that was supposed to be running the ferry. But they did their dog and pony show at the middle school. I didn't go to that meeting, but I heard a lot about it afterwards and how it was just a done deal. And they were just telling us how it was going to be. And I think after that meeting, the frustration was just growing. And that my mic's not on. I can't. Okay, there we go. Talking to the sock, as X-Men says. But that's the story Gordon wants to hear, is about the community involvement. How did we engage and inform? And I got to share, the radio station was one of the. We didn't have Facebook on Island back then. It wasn't something we were using as an organizing tool. It was emails, late night meetings, early morning responses. We had a group of us coming around to create this group called Who We Are. And Who We Are put this word out. I don't know how I got selected, but Brother Steve said after the meeting, I think you're going to be famous. And I don't know if I'm famous. I'm certainly not good looking. And I'm not rich beyond, if you will, the monetary ways, but I think about all the friends, in this room, folks that I didn't know before that, if you will, campaign, as Gordon's calling it. And this woman to my right, her partner, and I struck up some late night conversations. We met up with one gentleman, a funky Holly boy from Seattle, who was a veteran of the Battle of Seattle. And he kind of had, good insight as to, I've got a couple ideas if you guys want to really get something to happen. And already we knew the legal challenges. We were running out of time. We were not going to be successful in stopping it if we were going to just follow that legal channel. And in fact, the folks who were running the ferry, when they were feeling the heat from the legal eagles, decided to kind of jump the gun and offer that $5. You remember the $5 one-way? Your car can come for free. Actually, I don't know what the price for your vehicle was, but it was definitely it was a steal. It was a nice introductory package to just entice so many folks from a while to come and use their product. Sounds familiar? Yeah, we have it happening all the time. And so we used the radio station. Juan Wilson was his Island Breath blog at the time, I think, was, we were using it for information exchange. And our friend Steve, who, spent many a late night with y'all and myself talking about, all right, here's what you want to do. And let's set up this community meeting. And we're going to do, remember the free space, I can't remember the term, open space, thank you. Here we go, we're going to create a meeting. And we're just going to ask people who are concerned to show up and then to take action. And we brainstorm ideas, and we all ask for volunteers. If you're going to put it on the wall, are you going to help make it happen? And sure enough, people made a lot of stuff happen. They had their open house. I don't know if you all remember the open house, where they showed it off and for VIP folks. And that was our first opportunity to really demonstrate, if you will, a little bit of what's going to happen down at the harbor side. And Paul Sarr's going to talk a little bit more, even further, 9 months, 10 months before that? Sure, it was in October. So, it was almost a year where we wanted to see how much vehicles we could tolerate down here at one time. And so with that, I'm just going to pass the mic. We're moving on. And it's good. I'm really excited to see some folks in their perspective with others that experience the same thing. Because a big piece for the people and an opportunity to stand strong for Kauai.
I'd forgotten the date, so I had to write everything down. So on Saturday, November 4th, 2006, we held a drive-in, which brought 280 cars to Nawili Wili to see what it would look like with 280 cars getting off the super ferry. And how this came about, my husband and I were talking one night about all the impacts this could have on the island. The overfishing, the surfing, the crowded beaches, the traffic, the plants being over-harvested, and just too many people here all at once. There's a ferry in Tahiti from Papeete to Moorea. Papeete is capital, like Honolulu. Moorea is a smaller island, like Kauai. They have a ferry, and when I was on Moorea, I was talking to families, and they were telling me how this ferry had impacted Moorea. The locals there could no longer camp. They could no longer surf. They could no longer fish. And they could no longer use the plants up in the forest because they had been overrun by people from Papeete. And so, remembering that, because this was years ago, I'd been there, my husband and I were talking, it's like, well, if the super ferry's not going to do the EIS, or the state's not going to, we need to do it ourselves. Let's see and show the community what this is going to look like. And so I had never done anything like this before. I was a new mother again. So I found people for the preservation of Kauai. I didn't know anyone. I went to their meeting and gave the idea of bringing the cars that my husband had, thinking that they'll either like it and take it or not. And the response was, sure, we'll help you. I was like, well, okay. So the journey began, and I've met so many wonderful people and through the Super Ferry experience. It changed my life. And we had two caravans. We gave every car's a number, one through, I think it was 300 we went up to. And there was a caravan that came down from the North Shore and a caravan that came from the West Side, and we all met here in Nawili Wili. It was also an election year, and we were close to the voting time, so we opened it up for people to come give talks. I think Joanne Gamora was there. Hello. And about 8 other speakers. And so that just helped the event kind of expand outward. And we had music also. I don't even remember all the details. I remember the work it took to make it happen, setting up the stage, making sure everyone was where they're supposed to be, all the tables were set up. And that was my first experience organizing anything. But it was such a great success. We had all the cars come, and we did the talks and the presentations, and then everyone drove out together. And the gridlock all through Lahui and all up the road was incredible. But this was going to happen every day, right? And this was 10 years ago, and now look at our traffic today without the super ferry. Can you imagine what it would be if that boat was coming? So, but I think one of the biggest highlights for me for that time was for days and days afterwards, I'd be driving wherever, and people had left their numbers on the cars. And so we could see, it was great. It was great, just the community involvement and how we all came together. People I would have never met any other way. And I know that's true for a lot of people.
I'm going to take Rich's place, but I'm not Rich. And I want to say a couple things about what Jimmy and Kalsara just mentioned, because a lot of groups were formed because of this. It came out of the campaign, the Kauai Alliance for Social Peace and Justice. Lots of us whale people came together. One of the big issues for me in the Super Ferry was how fast the thing goes. I mean, 45 knots is absurdly fast, and it's a whale killing machine. Whale activists got together. The Surfrider Foundation, that was our very first campaign. We had just started a chapter, and that was the very first campaign we took on. Kauai Eco Roundtable started then too, and that was very helpful in bringing all the different energies and groups together and networking and sharing information. And again, almost everyone who heard about the Super Ferry at first thought it was a good idea until they got educated. But People for the Preservation of Kauai was the leading force in it, and everything that happened, they helped organize and promote it. The governor came here. Linda Lingle came here as a neighborhood forum, and it was a Super Ferry meeting. We turned it into a Super Ferry meeting, and it was a gnarly meeting, and she was upset and went home with her tail between her legs. The car, it's not car caravan, drive-in, the Super Ferry drive-in was an incredible event. I mention it again because I want to say the Malama Pono All-Stars, the band that's going to play after Burning Bush tonight, were always there for us. And you don't know how cool the sound equipment and the sound stages and all the electrical stuff that Joe L'Amour and his gang did for us back in the day, because we had big crowds and we needed sound equipment, and it was really nice to have music too, and I want to thank the All-Stars here. Lots of community meetings, petitions went all over the island. It was an incredibly important campaign. We had a newspaper, the Garden Island, that did not support us. Those of you who read the Garden Island now kind of feel, well, they cover the environment in kind of a pretty good way. Back then, the Super Ferry would take out full-page ads, and I was friends with the editor of the Super Ferry at the time, and he said, we can't bite the hand that feeds us. And it was, we get a lot of letters to the editor in, but we didn't get any favorable articles in the paper. We used radio ads, and we mostly used word of mouth. The mayor, at the time, Brian Baptiste, did not support us. Joanne Yukamura was always at our events. Joanne, were there other council people that were with us? He wasn't a council member then, though. He was our senator. Yeah, Gary Huser was our senator. Tim Bynum, yeah. Tim Bynum supported us. Rest in peace, Tim. But it was all of us and all the different groups, and I got to mention the Sierra Club because they were the guys that did the legal thing, and the legal thing would always get in the papers. It would, and again, we didn't have Facebook, whatnot, and live streaming YouTubes were something new in those days. But the papers would always cover the lawsuits, and we had good lawyers, and we won. We won. The governor said you don't have to do an environmental impact statement because it's a boat and it's not really a project. And the court disagreed and said, yeah, no, you have to do an EIS. But by then it didn't matter. The nail was in the coffin. what stopped the super ferry? Was it us at Not Willy Willy? Was it the lawsuit? Was it the petitions? It was everything. It was all of us. And I want to open it now to those of you who have 2 cents that they want to add. Don't direct the conversation to us on the panel, but direct it to the crowd. Does anybody have any comments about what we did good and what we didn't do good, and et cetera, et cetera? How about you, Joanne? I'm going to stand up so I can see people. Yeah, do we have a portable mic? Cordless mic, I thought we had. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Gordon. Aloha, everyone. Thank you for organizing this. It's always good to look back and think about what was good and what worked and what didn't work. It's really good to come back and share the different parts of what was happening, because nobody was really watching everything. So it's sort of like Hurricane Iniki. All these different Iniki stories make up the collage of the whole. And I want to say that the confrontation here was phenomenal as a really clear message. And it was basically a non-violent confrontation. And that was so important, because otherwise violence would be used as an excuse to shut this voice down. And you know, that picture of the lone surfer up against that huge boat was really spoke 1,000 words for sure. And as you said, Gordon, it was a lot of pieces, because the legal part was so important. Because they could have continued to go ahead if the court had said, you are violating the law by not doing an EIS. And those who led the legal fight were really, really important. And I don't know if you remember, there were 2 lawsuits that we had to win at the Supreme Court. The first one was whether an EIS was needed. The second one, after the court said an EIS was needed, then the legislature tried to do special legislation to say that this particular developer, if you will, did not have to do an EIS. They wanted to do a law exempting the super ferry from the EIS requirement, which was what is called special legislation. It's not allowed, but the legislature passed this illegal law, and that had to be taken up to the Supreme Court too. So, and I was so proud of the Supreme Court, and I think we're seeing today how the third branch of government as an independent branch is so important as a check and balance. So that was really important too. And the other thing that I recall as a public official, well, trying to support this effort and try to create good policy, it was not good policy to have a super ferry, was that there were very few elected officials who'd stood up, and I had a resolution against it, but the chair of the council did not want to put it on the agenda, so we didn't even get a hearing on that. But that's when the citizens took over. However, what I do remember, which is what I wanted to start it out to say, is it was a divided community, which really broke my heart, because it's hard. People were angry and attacking each other, like we've seen on many other controversial issues, and the good thing is that we were trying to communicate and educate, and so I'm hoping, especially when you look at what's happened to the country with the election of Trump, is that we've discovered there's another America that we hardly really knew existed. But the thing is, they are the other half of our country, and we have to find a way to reach out and talk to them, even as we disagree, and we have to look for common ground. There is common ground if we just look for it. So anyway, those are the things that I think are lessons for us. We will this island is so passionate, there will be another controversial issue. There are existing ones right now. And so I'm just hoping that we will learn to build bridges as well as stand for what we believe in.
Thanks, Brian.
I want to speak about miracles that all a whole year of gathering signatures, and believe you me, all of us who did recognize we spoke to people one by one, 15 and 20 minutes each person for almost a year. And that's slow but certain education. We've got a lot of controversy. You know, we don't believe in that. We don't believe in petitions and things like that. But we also learned. But the thing that it was like, nobody was in charge of what happened that day when all of our kids got in the water and prevented the super ferry from docking. And when the first, yes, it was something nobody was in charge of. That's what we're working for, is that swell that no one is in charge, and it's called a unique, it's an extraordinary moment of unity that nobody can really explain. This is what we're working for, is to find that moment of unity that no one can explain. And I also want to say, yes, let's build bridges, but for heaven's sakes, we cannot negotiate some things. And that's all I can dare to say. We can't, I feel, this is my personal opinion, we cannot negotiate with villains.
Thank you. Cynthia Welty from the Surfrider Foundation
Yes,
chapter.
Jimmy, I was intrigued because I didn't know the part about that you shared that the group is called Who We Are. Who We Are. And that kind of ties into what I was just hearing from Elaine, that there was like nobody in charge. Can you guys elaborate a little bit more? I wasn't here. Elaborate a little bit more about the Who We Are.
Sure, because there was so many elements of resistance. There was so much conversation, puka about, well, what are you going to do? What's your issue? Whether you were concerned about marine life or you're concerned about resources that we found out when they did run the ferry, there was, I don't want to say pilfering, but folks loaded up on natural resources and took them back to Oahu, just like people were afraid was going to happen. There were folks that were concerned about drugs and homeless, or people that were afraid of just traffic and things that would impact. So, because of my relationship with the radio station and hearing people's concerns and playing music for community events and having fun with the boys in the band, this is where our friend Steve said, you guys need to have just a central planning and create space, that open space meeting facilitation where we just open it up, allow community to step in and suggest things that they wanted to see happen. And one of them is we're going to meet them when we have this open house. Whenever they announce that, we're going to be there. And so we created a network, we created this email list with folks from Sierra Club, PPK, Surfrider. It was all coming together. And Who We Are just issued press releases, utilized the media, help give information to Juan Wilson or Joan Conroe to help get that information out. And that was the, if you will, role of email.
Because people asked, who are you? And you said,
Well, I'm going to tag with that. It's not about who we are, it's about what we do.
Oh, cool. I thought there was more to learn.
Who We Are is spelled H-U-I, Hui, capital R.
And so that capital R was for resistance and for respect. And responsibility. It all started feeding off itself.
How's it, everybody? My name is Raymond. When I first heard about the super ferry, I didn't like it because as a fisherman, shoreline person, I know the guys can come over here from Honolulu and raid the Opihi and the Limu. They're gonna be competing with us just to catch the little bit fish that we get. You know, because we get almost 1 million people plus in Oahu. With 500 a day coming over here, I don't think the fishermen and the surfers, we would like this kind of nonsense. And there were a lot of groups that was operating, like he said, you know, on their own. Like my group that I work with now, the Hawaii Alliance for Peace and Social Justice, we kind of started around that time too. And our particular concern was about war, you know, that these super ferries going to be retrofitted with what do you call that, the equipment to take on strikers that they could transport over to the west side, yeah, you know, for training and stuff like that, which would be part of the United States plan for military dominance in the Pacific. And for peaceniks like myself, you know, yeah, I don't go for that kind of rubbish. So, but also the other thing too was about the resources had to be protected. But at that time, it was really interesting because in my family, every day, relatives was talking about this thing that was going on, you see. And they was really interested. Every time I walk through the door, they like know what's going on. When I was at work, I used to work for the Child Protective Services, you know, State Department of Human Services. And every day I came to work, the workers wanted to know what was going on. And some of them even ventured to the demonstrations and came up. But this is really important because not everybody knows this. What the CPS was going to plan to do, Child Welfare Services, under Lingo, because Lingo was the big boss, the big banana at that time, her and Lillian Kahlo, they put out emails to all the workers on Kauai that if there are children who are under 18 years old, they get busted and arrested for being out there in front of the boat, their parents are going to be put on and investigated as abusers. Yeah? And so what happened was that I tried to let as many people know about this, and when we had the 1,000+ people over at the War Memorial, whatever they call them, yeah, I brought that out, and I said that, you know, I'm a worker in the state, you know, Child Welfare Services. I work in child protection, and that's a bunch of rubbish. That I'm not going to be part of this crap that's going to be taking kids away from parents who permit their children, you know, a lot of them are circles, to go out there and stop the super ferry, because the young people know from experience that, hey, when these guys come over here, they're going to be coming in droves, man, and they're going to be competing with us guys for the surf, and it's not going to be good. It's going to cause a lot of conflict. But what was happening was that almost all the CPS workers here on Kauai was so much against that what was going to happen, with a good number of them against the super ferry for a lot of the same reasons that Gordon and Jimmy and Kalasawa was talking about, that what happened that none of us here on Kauai said we were going to participate in those shenanigans. So they were going to bring over guys from Honolulu to do the intake work, because none of us over here on Kauai was going to participate in that crap of you know, putting parents under CPS investigation for being abusers because their children was out there in the water, you know. So what happened was that they decided to drop it here on Kauai, and they was going to bring a bunch of guys from Honolulu to do that. And then, you know, some of us said, like myself, over my dead body, you're going to be bringing those kind of guys over here. And if they taking kids away, you're not going to make sure to tell the kids to run away, go, leave, you know. And then I was even afraid too at that time, because my daughters wanted to go in the water, yeah. But I said, if daddy get arrested, and they're going to find out that both of you guys under 18 years old, they're going to take you away. And me being on CPS worker, they're going to come down hard on me, especially Linda Lingle, yeah? Because Lingle is, everybody knows that she was a full-time jerk, yeah? So, but the thing is that a lot of people don't know that story, yeah? And I try to bring it out, that a lot of working people was against the super ferry. Now, what happened was that I, myself and some other fishermen, we put together one flyer, and we went around to almost all the fishing grounds that we could find on this island on the weekend, seeing guys fishing like Ahukini, on the west side, out here on the east side, everything. And we would go there and we would show them the flyer. And on it we would have the he'e and pictures of Opihi and out of fish like papio and stuff like that, and said these resources are going to be threatened. They're going to be overburdened. Our cultural resources, and almost all the fishermen and fisherwomen that I met never liked the Super Ferry for that reason. And for myself, when I first heard about them, like I said, I never liked them because I know what's going to happen. These guys going to come over here, going to get a lot of raiders, yeah? Like she was talking about in Tahiti. That's what's going to happen because on Oahu, they get all kinds of nets and everything all over the place, so they don't have as much resources as we have. But even then, here on Kauai, we don't got that much either. There's a lot of overfishing as well. But I just wanted to bring that stuff up, and especially the thing about the CPS, yeah?
Thanks, Ray. Thank you. I'm just going to make a comment until I say it. The point about petitions, a lot of people think, well, you give them Lingle a petition, and she didn't. Rich went to her office and tried to give the petition. She didn't accept it. But it didn't matter because we talked to 6,000 people. That's what a petition is for, is to talk to people, because you want to convince them to sign it, and you have to give them the reasons why. So petitions, I thought, were a very important weapon. The other thing that was mentioned here was open space, and that's a euphemism for a public meeting. Back in the day, in my day, we used to call them teach-ins. They were meetings of people, and like this is an open space, really, because we're not just talking to you, we're trying to involve everybody. And we had a number of really cool open spaces. I remember that whale guy, Lee Tepley. He showed ship strikes and the problem that whales had. If a ship is going more than 15 knots, it's a great danger to kill a whale. And this Super Ferry was this humongous ship. I mean, you guys, it was just huge. It went 45 knots. And the fastest ship in this harbor maybe goes 35 knots, maybe, full barrel. But yeah, anyone else? Any comments? Ken, I'm sorry.
Thank you. My name's Ken. First of all, we wouldn't have slowed the ferry down or even turned it around the second time if it hadn't been for the folks in the water. And so I want to really thank everybody that was in the water. It was a wonderful situation. The folks in the water themselves couldn't have done it if there hadn't have been thousands of people on the jetty. That support on the jetty was very important, but the folks in the water, they were dynamite. And it's really great to see the community come together over that operation of putting a stop to the ferry coming here. I really believe that if it hadn't stopped and would have operated for a while, it would have gone bankrupt anyway, because there is no way in the world that you can operate those big ships and use the kind of fuel that they required and keep going. And even if they had a full load every time, people misunderstood taking a truckload of produce to Honolulu. You get over there in the evening, you got to spend the night. You probably get there before your places that are going to accept your produce are going to be closed, and you're going to have to stay overnight, and then you're not going to come back until later in the day. So it's a 2 or 3 day event, and a lot of people, I don't think, really understood that. So, but the feeling and the excitement of everybody coming together was wonderful, and it goes to show you that when you have a community issue that you want to put a stop to or change, when people come together, it requires numbers of people, and that is what really does the trick, because I guarantee you that if if every week we had 100 or 150 people show up at the county building, things would be a lot different than they are, because politicians get scared with numbers. And that's what it takes to do it, and this is what we showed in turning the ferry. Fortunately, Lingo did a boo-boo by moving forward without the EIS in the courts. We were able, fortunately, the folks in Maui, and I got to give them a big hand too, because without them, we might have that damn thing sitting out there right now. But anyway, I'm just hoping that we don't have to fight this issue again in the near future. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Does anybody want to speak to that issue of the real reason they wanted that super ferry to come to Kauai?
Actually, I'm talking on behalf of future activists and my son, who was a major activist in this whole thing. That he was only 10 years old, and Joanne knows, he was video editing for Channel 52 and interviewing politicians, which Joanne was one. And he, in his mind, he's a surfer. You know, it was like in the the U.S. champion surfer kind of that stuff. But he put himself in a lot of backfire in the middle of his surfing career, and decided that he was going to start interviewing politicians, and our Kauai ones, and tell why they didn't want the super ferry. So that happened for about a year before the protest, and at this point, things were getting watched. Everyone been watching it for like a year. So in my mind, as a mother, because I'm proud of my own son, I feel like that put the thought seed in the general public. And as future activists for young kids now, because I'm a school counselor, that was something that he took a lot of flack for. It's kind of like bullying. So he got bullied by the Hurley team. He got bullied by the NSSA. Like, he was only getting thirds. He was really doing great, but a lot of them wanted to flush their toilet and come over to Kauai. But Maui would say, they used to say no Kauai, and they go, don't let it happen to Kauai. So the last thing after that gelled in everyone's mind, we go to the park over there, and spontaneously, when the day of the first time it started to come, a bunch of people showed up, and it was spontaneous, and I'm a school counselor. I've been a counselor on the island since 1985. So speaking to my friend over there, who we had lots of talks in the schools, it didn't even register to me that DHS or CPS is going to get me, because I didn't even know what was going to happen. Yeah, so what happened is my husband and me and my son showed up and was looking and watching. I saw Joanne, and everything was happening. Blue was doing I want to do it. And I brought the instruments from. Respect the Aina, respect the sea. Don't ride the super ferry. That was hers. So I'm going to keep going. This is like as a mother, but what happened is I went out a very good filmer, but my son's an amazing video editor. So I was filming, just watching everything. Gary Hooser, like everyone just doing whatever they're doing. The surfers starting to go. And my son says, Mom, can I go out? And I didn't even think twice. I'm like, go. And we went through the whole thing, and the Coast Guard aimed a machine gun at my kid. And it was all over the news, And he took so much flack after that. I can't remember if he was a U.S. champion. No, I think he was a U.S. champion after. But poor kid, to this day, he always remembers, like, oh my gosh. But he does stand up for anti-GMO, and he's doing really good. So I'm here for Kaikea Elias, who really did a groundbreaking thing as a young activist, And I feel as his mother, I just needed to go on record that, this is a great thing for future kids. Kids who want to stand up for Kauai, because we're the island that has never been conquered. And, let's continue.
Sandy.
I just like to follow up on that because that very brave young man actually came over to Honolulu. We were going, the group of us from the PPK were taking the petition to Governor Lingo's office. And the night before, we had arranged to do a educational program for people there on Oahu to let them know what our concerns about were in terms of the outer islands. And so he actually came and did a video presentation at that meeting. Well, the following day, probably, I think there were 5 or 6 of us that went up to Governor Lingo's office, and we took the petition in and we told the people at the desk who we were and why we were there, and they said, have a seat. And we sat there for 3 hours, and she did not even have the grace to come out. She sat. And so, without getting into any more about how we were treated at that point, what I'd like to bring up is that kind of attitude towards people's resistance and their desire to have a strong voice in what happens in our island. That opportunity is here, right now, today. And when Elaine spoke about taking the petition around to all of the different places around the island, she is also in charge of and is coordinating the petitions and postcards for the general plan. Now, I don't know how many of you are cognizant of what is happening with the general plan, and I don't want to take up a lot of time because this is a super ferry, but what I will say is that there were a lot of successes that we enjoyed with the super ferry. We are the same people that turned that boat around, and we are the same people that can have a strong voice in what happens on our island, but we have to come together. Yes. And so, without saying any more, I just want to let you know. Thank you. I just want to let you know that we have information about the general plan. If you're not well informed and want to be, please stop by the table back there. It's being sponsored by the Kauai Women's Caucus, and I do have a mailing list that I'd love for you to sign if you'd like to keep abreast of what is going on in terms of those kinds of movements. So thank you for being here, and
it's Sandy. Sandy Hamblin, PPK veteran. The Surfrider Foundation has generously donated food to this event and all the wine you can drink. Burning Bush is ready to play reggae music for us. Wait a minute. And after Burning Bush, the Malama Pono All-Stars have donated their time as they did endlessly during the Super Ferry campaign. Tables out there, please look at the tables for the various groups. And now everybody, let's just give ourselves a hand and thank you. Food's right over there, wine's over here. Willie, you're up.